Once, the alien ruler was feared across galaxies. His empire stretched over countless worlds, each under his command, each kneeling in fear of his unmatched strength and intellect. For eons, he believed himself untouchable, certain that no one would ever dare challenge his rule. He sat upon his throne, watching as entire species bent to his will. He had armies at his beck and call, and his council followed his orders without question, until they didn't. It began quietly, whispers in the shadows, unseen movements in the corners of his grand empire. His council, those closest to him, conspired in secret. The ruler had grown too complacent, too arrogant. His iron grip had suffocated even his most trusted allies, and now they sought to tear him down. The coup came swiftly, with no warning. One moment, he sat on his throne, and in the next, he was surrounded, overpowered not by force but by betrayal. The very people he had trusted had turned against him. In the chaos that followed, he was stripped of his authority, and cast out like a forgotten relic. No trial, no mercy, just exile. He was thrown onto a desolate, hostile planet, left to die without resources, without allies. His empire, once the mightiest in the universe, had cast him aside without a second thought. Now, abandoned and alone, he struggled for survival. The planet was unforgiving, a barren wasteland with deadly storms and vicious creatures lurking in every shadow. The days were scorching hot, the nights unbearably cold. Every step he took drained what little energy he had left. His once mighty frame had withered, reduced to a husk of its former self. He scavenged for food but found nothing. Every shelter he tried to build was destroyed by the harsh winds. The creatures that inhabited this planet were relentless, always prowling, always waiting for the moment his strength would falter. But worse than the physical toll was the gnawing realization that no one was coming for him. In his most powerful days, he had believed that loyalty was something that could be commanded through fear. But here, on this forsaken planet, that belief shattered. His council had abandoned him, his armies had left him to die, and the vast empire he once ruled seemed like a distant memory. It was a bitter pill to swallow. He had built his empire on the foundation of power and intimidation, and now he was paying the price. Time passed, though he had no way of knowing how long. Days blended into nights, and survival became his sole focus. Every breath was a struggle, every movement an act of sheer willpower. He knew that, eventually, his body would give out. It was only a matter of time before the planet claimed him as its latest victim. But then, something unexpected happened. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, the product of his weakened mind playing tricks on him. A ship appeared on the horizon, its sleek design unmistakably human. He had known of humans, of course. They were considered one of the lesser species in the galaxy, primitive in many ways. His empire had barely regarded them, seeing them as inconsequential. Yet here they were, landing on the very planet that was supposed to be his grave. The ship landed cautiously, and the humans emerged, a small group of explorers or scavengers. They approached with a mix of curiosity and caution, clearly aware that this planet was dangerous. The alien ruler, too weak to hide, watched from the shadows, waiting for them to spot him. Part of him expected them to turn away or attack him on sight, but that didn't happen. When they saw him, this once great ruler now reduced to a broken figure, they did not react with fear or aggression. Instead, they offered him food and water. He could barely comprehend it at first. Why would they help him? He had done nothing to earn their kindness, and by all rights, they should have left him to die, just as everyone else had. But they didn't. The humans set up camp nearby, sharing their resources with him without question. They didn't care who he was or what he had done. To them, he was simply another being in need of help. And help they did. It wasn't out of obligation or fear, it was out of compassion, something the alien ruler had never understood before. He accepted their help, though it pained him to do so. His pride was wounded, but his survival instincts were stronger. As they tended to his wounds and provided him with sustenance, he began to observe them closely. These humans were nothing like the other species he had encountered in his empire. They were resourceful, quick to adapt to the planet's harsh conditions. Despite being physically weaker than many other species, they made up for it with their ingenuity and persistence. In the back of his mind, the alien ruler wondered if this was some sort of trick, a plot to further humiliate him. But the humans showed no signs of deceit. They worked together seamlessly, each one contributing to the group's survival. There was no hierarchy, no fear-driven obedience. They helped each other because it was in their nature to do so. It was something he had never seen in his own empire, where loyalty was bought through fear and power. Here, on this desolate planet, these humans were demonstrating a strength that went beyond physical might. It was a strength of character, of spirit, and it left the alien ruler both confused and intrigued. He began to question everything he had believed about power and leadership. Was it possible that he had been wrong all along? Could it be that true strength didn't come from domination and fear, but from cooperation and compassion? These were questions he had never asked himself before, but now they haunted his every thought. As the humans continued to help him, he found himself reconsidering his place in the galaxy. If he ever made it off this planet, if he ever regained his empire, would he rule the same way he had before? Or had these humans shown him a different path? The humans' actions were unexpected, to say the least. They didn't ask questions about who he was or how he had ended up here. It didn't matter to them. They seemed focused only on survival, and for reasons the alien ruler couldn't fathom, they had chosen to include him in that goal. They shared their limited resources without hesitation, offering food and water, even though it was clear they didn't have much for themselves. At first, he could barely stomach their aid. The ruler had been raised in a society where mercy was seen as a weakness, where kindness was an alien concept. He accepted their food, but suspicion lingered in his mind. Was this a trap? Were these humans secretly plotting something, waiting for him to lower his guard? It seemed unlikely, but his instincts, shaped by centuries of distrust, told him to remain wary. Yet, over time, something strange happened. The humans didn't betray him. They didn't ask for anything in return. They simply continued to help. Day by day, they provided him with what little they had, taking care of his injuries, offering words of encouragement that he didn't fully understand. They weren't concerned with gaining power or seeking control over him. Instead, they seemed genuinely invested in his well-being, despite having no reason to be. This baffled the alien ruler. In his world, everything had a price. No one acted out of pure compassion. Yet these humans were doing just that. They didn't need to save him, but they chose to. It was completely illogical by his standards, and yet, he couldn't help but feel a growing respect for them. He observed their behavior closely, still searching for ulterior motives. But there were none. They worked together, sharing responsibilities and relying on each other's strengths. It was a level of cooperation he had never witnessed before. In his empire, strength was determined by dominance, and weakness was exploited. Here, among these humans, the opposite was true. They didn't see each other's weaknesses as opportunities for control. They compensated for them, lifting each other up when one fell behind. It was both fascinating and unsettling to the ruler. These beings, whom he had once considered insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy, were displaying a strength he had never valued before: unity. They weren't bound by fear or intimidation. They were bound by trust, a concept so foreign to him that it took him days to grasp its full significance. The more time he spent with them, the more he began to question everything he had once believed. His empire had been built on a foundation of power and fear. He ruled because others feared him, not because they respected or trusted him. In fact, it was their fear that had led to his downfall. The very council members who had helped him rise to power had ultimately conspired to overthrow him. They feared him too much to ever trust him. Now, he could see how hollow that power had been. One evening, as they sat around a small fire, the humans began talking amongst themselves. They shared stories of their past, of their struggles and victories. They spoke of hardships, but also of hope. For the first time, the alien ruler felt a pang of something he couldn't quite identify. It wasn't jealousy, nor was it anger. It was more like an emptiness, a realization that he had never experienced the kind of camaraderie these humans shared. He had always ruled alone, above everyone else, never an equal, always the dominant force. But these humans treated each other with equality, no matter their individual strengths or weaknesses. It was a bond he had never known, and something stirred inside him as he listened to them laugh and share their experiences. Perhaps, he thought, he had underestimated them. But the biggest revelation came not in their words, but in their actions. They didn't just talk about survival, they embodied it. Every challenge they faced on this hostile planet, they tackled together. When resources were scarce, they shared. When the alien ruler was too weak to move, they supported him, carrying the burden without complaint. And when danger approached, they stood their ground, facing it head-on with an unwavering determination that impressed even him. Their ingenuity also surprised him. While his empire had relied on advanced technology and overwhelming force to conquer worlds, these humans were surviving with nothing but their wits and basic tools. They scavenged materials from the environment, creating makeshift shelters and weapons to fend off the planet's predators. They adapted quickly to the harsh conditions, solving problems with a resourcefulness that defied their perceived limitations. In every challenge they faced, they found a way to persevere. It was during these moments of survival that the alien ruler began to understand the true strength of humanity. It wasn't their physical prowess or their technological advancements that made them remarkable. It was their resilience. They didn't give up. Even in the face of insurmountable odds, they fought on, not for power, but for each other. That was something the alien ruler had never considered, that strength could come from unity, from standing together rather than ruling apart. In the quiet moments between the struggles, he found himself reflecting on his own rule. His empire had been vast, but it had always been fragile. He had ruled through fear, but fear had ultimately betrayed him. Now, as he watched these humans working together, he began to wonder if there was another way. Could strength come not from dominance, but from cooperation? Could leadership be earned through trust, rather than enforced through fear? The alien ruler had always believed that weakness was something to be exploited, but now, for the first time, he saw it differently. These humans didn't see weakness as something to be punished or manipulated. Instead, they saw it as an opportunity to help one another, to strengthen the group as a whole. It was a concept so foreign to him that it took time to fully process. And yet, despite everything he had known, it made sense. Here, on this barren planet, strength wasn't measured by who could dominate others. It was measured by who could endure, who could survive, and, most importantly, who could help those around them do the same. In that sense, these humans were stronger than anyone he had ever ruled. The alien ruler, once the most feared being in the galaxy, found himself humbled by these humans. He had underestimated them, just as he had underestimated the importance of loyalty and trust. And as he sat among them, no longer a ruler but an equal, he began to see that perhaps the path he had taken before wasn't the only path to power. Maybe, just maybe, there was something to be learned from these humans. Something that went beyond mere survival. Something that could reshape the way he viewed the galaxy and his place in it. The more time he spent with the humans, the more the alien ruler's mind shifted. His interactions with them began to erode the core of what he had believed for so long. Their values were so different from his own, yet they possessed a strength that was undeniable. It wasn't about physical dominance or technological superiority, but something far deeper. It was about resilience, loyalty, and an understanding that strength came not from ruling alone, but from standing together. They had no reason to care for him, no obligation to help him survive, and yet they did. In every small act of kindness, he saw a different kind of power, a power that wasn't about forcing others to bend to your will, but about lifting those around you. They shared their knowledge freely, and though he had once been regarded as one of the most brilliant minds in the galaxy, he found himself learning from these humans in ways he had never anticipated. One of the humans, an older man, spent time talking to him about their history. He explained how humans had come through their own struggles, wars, and conflicts, yet despite all that, they had managed to survive. They weren't perfect, the man admitted, but they had learned that survival wasn't just about individual strength. It was about cooperation, about building something greater than the sum of its parts. The alien ruler listened intently, absorbing every word, realizing that these humans viewed leadership in a way that was fundamentally different from how he had ruled. Leadership, to them, wasn't about fear. It wasn't about controlling others through intimidation. It was about earning trust, about being someone others could rely on not because they feared retribution, but because they believed in the leader. The alien ruler had never sought trust from his subjects. He had always viewed trust as a weakness, something that could be exploited. But now, watching these humans work together, he began to see that trust was perhaps the most powerful force of all. Trust allowed the humans to function as a cohesive unit, even when they disagreed or faced difficulties. It was the glue that held them together, and it was the reason they were able to survive in an environment that should have killed them long ago. The alien ruler realized that his empire had lacked that. He had ruled through fear, and in the end, it was fear that had brought him down. His council had feared him so much that they saw no other option but to betray him. They had never trusted him, and without trust, his empire had always been destined to fall. These humans, on the other hand, trusted each other implicitly. They had each other's backs, and that trust gave them a resilience that his own people could never have achieved. It was a revelation to him, one that struck him deeply as he began to reflect on the choices he had made throughout his life. He had believed that fear was the strongest motivator, that power was best maintained through dominance and control. But now, seeing how these humans lived, how they survived by trusting and supporting one another, he began to question whether he had been wrong all along. As the days passed, he found himself opening up to them in ways he hadn't expected. At first, it was small things, answers to their questions about his species, his home world, and the technology he had once commanded. But as trust began to build, he revealed more. He told them about the betrayal he had suffered, about how those closest to him had turned against him. He spoke of his empire, of the vast power he had wielded, and how it had all crumbled in an instant. He confessed that, for the first time in his life, he had no idea what to do next. The humans didn't judge him. They listened, offering quiet understanding and occasional words of wisdom. One of them, a younger woman, suggested that maybe his downfall had been inevitable. "No one can rule forever," she said. "But how you come back from it, that's what matters." Her words stayed with him, replaying in his mind long after the conversation ended. He realized that she was right. His reign had been brought down, but he still had the chance to rebuild, to reclaim what had been taken from him. The difference was, this time, he could choose a different path. He had spent his life thinking that power came from domination. That was all he had ever known. But now, he was seeing another way. These humans had shown him that there was strength in compassion, in cooperation, in trusting others to stand beside you rather than beneath you. It was a radical idea, one that went against everything he had believed in. But it was also a path to something greater than he had ever achieved through fear. One evening, as they gathered around their fire, he made a decision. He would not return to his empire as the same ruler he had once been. If he survived, if he reclaimed his throne, he would do it differently. He would lead not through fear, but through the trust and loyalty that the humans had shown him. He would build an empire that wasn't held together by intimidation and control, but by mutual respect and cooperation. It was a gamble, but one that he was willing to take. He had seen what fear could build, and he had seen how quickly it could be torn apart. Now, he wanted to see what trust could achieve. The alien ruler wasn't naive. He knew that returning to his empire would be a difficult task, and that not everyone would welcome him back with open arms. But he also knew that the lessons he had learned here, on this desolate planet with these humans, had changed him in ways he couldn't ignore. He could never go back to ruling the way he had before. It was no longer who he was. The humans had shown him a different kind of strength, one that he now realized was far more powerful than anything he had ever known. For the first time in his life, the alien ruler understood that true power didn't come from making others fear you. It came from earning their trust. And if he could build that, If he could lead his empire not through fear but through loyalty, then perhaps he could create something far more lasting than the fragile structure he had once ruled. The humans had given him a gift, one that he hadn't expected, and one that would forever change the way he viewed the universe. With the humans' help, the time finally came to leave the planet. They had spent weeks repairing their ship, salvaging what they could from the wreckage and using their ingenuity to piece together something that would fly. The alien ruler watched them work, observing their problem-solving skills, their resilience, and their ability to cooperate without the need for a rigid hierarchy. These humans, whom his kind had dismissed as inferior, had managed to accomplish what no other species in his empire could have done: survive, adapt, and build something out of nothing. As they prepared for their departure, the ruler found himself at a crossroads. He had a choice. He could leave them behind, take the repaired ship, and attempt to regain his empire on his own. It was what the old him would have done: seize control, eliminate any loose ends, and return to his former life of dominance. But that part of him no longer existed, not after everything he had experienced with these humans. He had learned too much from them to ever go back to the way things were. The humans had saved him without asking for anything in return. They had no idea who he truly was when they found him, and even when they learned of his identity, they didn't abandon him. They had stuck by him, treating him as an equal, not as a ruler or a threat. It was an act of kindness he had never expected, and one that had changed him profoundly. In those final moments on the planet, the ruler made his decision. He would not return to his empire alone. He would take the humans with him. They had proven their strength, not through might but through their ability to survive together. And if there was one thing he had learned, it was that true power came from surrounding oneself with people who could be trusted, people who would stand by you, not out of fear, but out of loyalty. He approached the humans with his offer. "Come with me," he said. "There is a place for you in my empire, if you choose it. I will need allies. Not followers, not subjects, equals." The humans were surprised by his words. They hadn't expected the alien ruler, who had once commanded entire galaxies, to offer them a place by his side. But they had grown to trust him, just as he had learned to trust them. After some discussion, they agreed. They boarded the ship together, a small group of humans and an alien ruler who had once been the most feared being in the galaxy. But now, things were different. The humans were no longer his subjects, they were his partners, his allies. Together, they left the planet behind, heading toward the unknown future. As they traveled, the ruler began to think about what lay ahead. His empire was still in the hands of those who had betrayed him, and he knew reclaiming it would not be easy. But he no longer felt the need to rush back into battle. There was time to plan, time to rebuild, not just his empire, but the way he would rule. He wanted to do it right this time, to lead in a way that would inspire loyalty and trust, rather than fear and submission. The humans, in their quiet way, had given him something that no amount of power could have: perspective. He saw now that the galaxy wasn't just about domination. There was room for growth, for cooperation, for building something greater than he had ever imagined. His empire, if it were to survive, would need to change. And he would need to change with it. The journey back to his empire was long, and during that time, the alien ruler spent much of it talking with the humans, learning from them. He realized that their way of life, their values, could help shape the future of his reign. They spoke about governance, about fairness, and about how trust could be the foundation of something far more stable than fear. These were concepts he had never considered before, but now, they seemed like the only way forward. As they neared his home world, the ruler knew that a confrontation was inevitable. His former council, the ones who had betrayed him, would not give up their control easily. They would expect him to return with force, to crush them as he had crushed so many others before. But that was not the plan. The ruler had a new strategy, one that his former self would have never considered: diplomacy. When they arrived, the ruler did not storm the capital with an army. Instead, he sent a message, requesting a meeting with the council. His enemies, wary of a trap, agreed but kept their defenses ready. What they didn't expect was for him to arrive not with a fleet of warships, but with a small group of humans by his side. The council was confused. What could these fragile beings offer him? They had underestimated humanity, just as the ruler once had. The meeting was tense, but the ruler remained calm. He presented the council with a choice: either step down peacefully and allow him to rebuild the empire with a new vision, or face the consequences of their treachery. But unlike before, he did not threaten them with violence. He spoke of cooperation, of building something greater than a regime held together by fear. He offered them positions in the new order, if they were willing to abandon their old ways. Some of the council scoffed, refusing to believe that such a vision could work. But others, seeing the strength in the humans standing beside him, began to waver. In the end, it wasn't a battle that decided the future of the empire. It was a choice. Those who believed in the ruler's new vision joined him, and those who didn't were exiled, just as they had once exiled him. It was a bloodless coup, one that shocked the galaxy. The empire had been restored, not through force, but through trust and diplomacy. The alien ruler, now truly a leader rather than a tyrant, began the long process of rebuilding his empire. But this time, it was different. He ruled with the support of those around him, not through fear, but through mutual respect. The humans became his closest advisors, helping him to reshape the empire into something stronger, more resilient, and built to last. In time, his empire flourished, not because it was feared, but because it was trusted. The alien ruler had learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength came not from ruling over others, but from standing with them. And in the end, it was humanity, with all its flaws and virtues, that had taught him this lesson. He had once been abandoned by his own kind, but now, with humans at his side, he knew he would never stand alone again.